I'm not going to Gen Con, but if I were, this is how I would pack to and from Gen Con. Hello and welcome to the first-ish episode of my How Tiffany Plans and Attends Conventions. I'm kind of doing this out of order because Gen Con is in 2 weeks, and while I am not going to Gen Con, I think this video would be very helpful for anyone that is going to Gen Con, particularly if you are flying to Gen Con. My series on how Tiffany attends and goes to conventions will cover things like how I plan. Basically, I've designed it for how I go to Essen and like the things and whatnot I do and when I do the things I do when I'm going to Essen. How I pack to and from Essen is very similar to how I pack to and from Gen Con. I just go for a longer trip to Essen, and baggage fees are a little different for Essen, but what I do for Essen can also be related to Gen Con and vice versa. So if you're going to Gen Con, this video should be very helpful. If you're going to Essen from the United States or another country where you have international baggage situations, this should still be just as helpful. So let's start with packing to the convention, because that's kind of the first part of going to a convention / packing. So what I do is actually 2 weeks before I even start packing for the convention, I make a packing list. And I actually have my packing list for Essen from last year. So this is my packing list for Essen from last year. And I started this 2 weeks out and I just slowly kind of added to it. It helps me make sure I don't miss anything. So it covers things like clothing for Steve and I. It says how many days we're gone. We were gone for 11 days, so we needed to pack for 11 days essentially. We talk about what kind of suitcases we're gonna bring, what electronics we're gonna bring, the camera equipment that we were gonna bring for filming, what toiletries we were gonna bring, and then other like essential things. I also had Zena's pack list because she was going to a friend's house while we were in Essen, so she had her own pack list. I also start about a week before I pack, so a week before the night before I leave. I start gathering stuff. Like if I know that I need my badge holder and I'm in the place where the badge holder is, I grab my badge holder and then I physically put it in the pile of like to pack. If I have my badges were shipped to me, I put those in the pile. If I have bought snacks or extra socks or any kind of thing like that that is for the trip, I take it and I put it in that pile of things to go. And that just means when I actually go to pack, I have to run around the house and gather less things, so I'm less likely to forget something super important like a phone charger or Ichi drinking water. The other thing that I start to think about and plan about 1 week out is what suitcases I'm gonna bring. Usually this is kind of a mental thing, but the suitcases that you bring will have a big impact on how much stuff you can bring back. I personally recommend, if you're checking your suitcases, you want the hard-shelled roller bags, and you wanna make sure that they're good bags, like bags that you've probably had for a while, hopefully. If not, that's okay. I got my bags at Costco a few years ago, and it was like a nested set of hard case roller bags, and they have lasted so much. It's fantastic. I love these bags. They have gone everywhere with me. So yeah. But the reason I recommend hard shell bags is because suitcases get thrown a lot when you check them. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen one of those behind the scenes, like somebody puts a camera on their bag and like shows it going through the airports, but the bags get put on these trolley like conveyor belt systems in the bows, and they're like dropping 10 feet into piles of other bags. Like bag boys or bag people will like pick them up and like chuck them onto the carts, then they get like picked up and chucked onto the plane. And then there was like an article where a guy was interviewed and he was like a bag handler and he put the bags on the plane, and he was like, if your bag doesn't have wheels, we literally throw it down the plane. So in the article, the guy was like, if your bag has wheels and it's like the 4 wheels, so they just push, they just put them down and push them because it saves their back like so much. But yeah, that's why I recommend the 4-wheeled hardcase bags, because they can take it and they'll keep your game safe from like things landing on them. And if they have the 4 wheels, they'll get pushed nicely down the checked bag thing. So yeah, okay. I have feelings and opinions about suitcases. Planning your luggage is important because you need to know what you have to work with when you're at home and when you're making your buying game list. At least that's what I do. I don't like to ship games because shipping is actually not that cheap. It's usually anywhere from $30 to $40 to ship a game, or to ship a box of games, depending on where you're shipping. And if you're shipping from the convention center, it's going to be way more because they add service charges and whatnot to it. So the $50 to pay for a checked bag is actually sometimes worth it. If you're flying some airlines, I know the first bag will be checked for $25. That's definitely cheaper than shipping if you have a large roller bag. However, you have to pay to get that large roller bag to the con, so there's that. I fly Southwest because they allow 2 free checked bags, so it's worth it for me because I book my flights far enough out that they're usually reasonably priced with what other airlines are offering, and because I know I'm checking bags, it's worth it for me because I don't have to pay the baggage fee 2 ways. For me, when I fly to Gen Con, I anticipate bringing back 4 suitcases. That's 2 checked and 2 carry-ons. My maximum amount of bags that I can bring back with me without paying additional fees. I always have a plan. If I need to ship games, I know how to take a Uber to a shipping facility to buy a box and to ship it. But for me, because I have free checked bags, it makes more sense for me to fly with my checked bags. When Steve and I go to Essen, because there are 2 of us, we actually bring 6 empty suitcases with us, and so we return with 8 bags. We can put all of the things that we take to Essen in my backpack and a carry-on, and everything else we just nest and check. In addition to clothes, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute, you want to also bring things like snacks, consumable items, so things that you will eat while you're at the convention. So when you are walking around and you forget to eat, or you eat like 6 hours late because you are so into the games, you want to have snacks that you can pull out while you're sitting down in a demo and just like eat while the demoer is telling you stuff. They seriously don't mind as long as your snack is not insanely messy. I recommend that you pack a kind of minimalist approach to clothing, but not too minimal. Gamers tend to have a reputation of being somewhat smelly, and when you're at a convention and you're walking around a lot and you're with a lot of people, you'll create your own BO and sweat. And so recycling or re-wearing the same shirt several days in a row probably won't work for you. Please don't attempt to do that at all. So there are some items that you can get away with wearing multiple days in a row. There are some items that you cannot get away with wearing multiple days in a row, and you should not try to get away with that. For example, for everyday items, I pack 1 pair of fresh underwear for every day of the trip. This includes the flight home. I pack 1 pair of fresh socks if I wear socks. I have a pair of sandals that I love that I usually wear to conventions, but if I know I'm going to be walking like an insane amount, I will wear tennis shoes. They do just provide better support for my feet, and my feet hate me less after the con, so then I need to pack socks, 1 pair for every day. You also want to pack 1 clean shirt for every day. And a lot of people think they can skip this, but you really can't. Especially if you're wearing a backpack. I wear a backpack the entire convention. And so unless I'm sitting, I'm wearing the backpack, and my armpits just pick up the backpack's like pressed into it, so the shirt gets sweaty from like on my back and also in the armpits, and so I have to wear a fresh shirt every day. Otherwise, people would not like to be around me. So yeah. Otherwise, that's basically all you need to pack for like every day. I pack 1 pair of pants for every 3 days. So if I'm going to the con for 6 days, so Gen Con I go for 6 days because it's a 5-day con and I usually fly in a day early. Sometimes I'll fly in a day later, but either way, I will pack a pair of jeans because the convention center is very cold and jeans work really well for that. I'll pack a pair of capris, so if I know that I'm going to be spending more time outside or doing more events in a warmer space than just like the main demo expo hall, I'll wear my capris. And then if I need, I'll bring like leggings or tights. I usually fly in those and treat those as like PJ pants if I have a roommate situation going on. So yeah, that's kind of a rough formula that I do because with re-wearing pants, you don't need to have a fresh pair of pants for every day. In addition to that, your base clothes, I recommend 1 layer for warmth. So this is like a sweater or a hoodie. I usually fly in this so it's not in my suitcase. So I'll fly home and I'll fly to the con wearing my hoodie. So even if it's a thicker hoodie, it doesn't take up space. But convention centers, they pump the AC up really high and I get cold. So I find it helpful for me to have a hoodie. I also check the weather forecast. If rain is in the forecast, I bring my rain shell. And funny enough, even if rain isn't in the forecast where I'm flying to, it's often in the forecast for where I'm coming from. So I often have to bring a raincoat just for when I'm like going to the airport or when I'm coming home from the airport. So, but the rain shell is an added layer of warmth if you get cold. So I always keep the rain shell on me as well. That's basically it for clothes, with the exception of bras. If you are a person that wears bras or some sort of like compression situation for your chest, I usually just bring 2 bras for a 5-day trip. I can wear a bra for the same bra for like a whole week. I might swap it between days, so like alternate days, but for the most part, my bras are pretty good quality bras, and so I can get away with wearing 1 bra for an entire Gen Con. And now you know about my bras. Link down below in the doobly-doo to True & Co, where I get my bras. Sign up with the link and I get money! This is not a sponsored video, I just remembered that I have a share link. Anyway, bring 1 pair of shoes. Don't bring 17 pairs of shoes. Don't bring 3 pairs of shoes. Don't bring 2 pairs of shoes. Bring 1 pair of super comfy shoes that you can wear for hours at a time while walking miles a day, and they're super comfortable for standing in. Don't bring 2 pairs of shoes. They take up unnecessary weight. You're not gonna wear them because they're not unless they're super functional, and it just doesn't make sense. Like, they just take up unnecessary space. They're shoes. Wear just good quality tennis shoes, support shoes, Tevas if you have those. Just 1 pair of shoes. So if you feel like that amount of clothes doesn't really work, I typically will pack that quantity of clothes for every trip that I do, with the exception of Essen. With Essen, because Steve and I make a vacation out of it and we go to Essen or Europe for about 10 to 11 days, we're actually going 12 days this year, I think. We actually wash our clothes while we're over there. So we only bring clothes for 5 or 6 days, and then we wash our clothes during the trip. And we wash the clothes in the shower, and then we'll like hang dry them in the hotel room. The only other things that I recommend that you pack would be a box of Ziploc gallon size bags if you are planning to purchase a lot of games and bring them home, which is why I'm assuming you're watching this video, and some sort of Sharpie permanent marker to label those bags. You just need to be realistic about your entertainment, like what you're bringing to entertain yourself. Do you really need to bring your laptop, your iPad, your DS, your Switch, your Vive? Like, do you need to bring all of your entertainment things? Probably not, because you're going to be playing games with people all night, and when you're not playing games, you're gonna be sleeping so you can play more games later. Which brings me to, do you need to bring board games to a board game convention? My opinion is no. I am usually acquiring so many games that I have games to play within the first day of the show, and so I don't need to bring games, especially if you're flying. If you have the very small like pack of games and you have 1 or 2 of those in your backpack, that works really well. I have like 1 of those in my bag at all times. But aside from that, I don't bring games to cons because it just takes up suitcase space on the way home. So let's talk about coming home. There are several things you need to do at the convention in preparation of bringing your games home. First and foremost is you need to punch all of your games. So you need to go through and get rid of all of the empty punch boards because that's just dead weight and space. So you want to punch all of the tokens, all of the bits. If there is a bag of wooden bits, leave that intact. Label that bag what game it goes to. If there are decks of cards that are shrink wrapped together, leave them shrink wrapped. Write the name of the game that they go to and just toss them in the pile. You're just gonna take all of the other smaller components like the cardboard chits and whatnot, maybe smaller wooden bits. You're gonna take them, you're gonna put them into a gallon-sized Ziploc bag, and then you're gonna write the name of the game on it. Then you're gonna nest the box base into the box lid, and you're gonna figure out how to nest that box. Some smaller games you can get away without breaking them down. It doesn't make sense sometimes for smaller card games to take the cards out of the box because it wouldn't fit anything. You wouldn't be able to fit a smaller game inside the small game box. So those ones you can typically leave intact. Some smaller game boxes, it makes sense to just leave the stuff inside of them. It's just kind of, you have to play it by ear. Once you've removed all of the bits from the box, you want to take the insert, if it is a cardboard folded insert, out of the game box, flatten it, because I assure you it can be flattened, and write the name of the game on the back of the insert. Then, when you're packing, you can take all of these flattened inserts and put them at the bottom of your suitcase where they'll be nice and safe and flat. And when you get them home, you just have to fold them back and put them back in the box. By taking out the inserts, you make it easier to nest other game boxes in your larger game boxes without having to throw away that nice shiny insert. If it's not a nice shiny insert and it's totally not worth keeping, just throw it away. You want to make sure that you punch your games every night. If you get a haul of games, punch it that night. You don't want to have a backlog of games that you need to punch, bag, and sort and nest when you're trying to pack for your flight, which leaves in half an hour. Like, you just don't want to be doing that. So every night when you come back to your convention, before you pass out in your bed, just sit there and punch games. Punch, bag, label. Okay, so that's how I prep my games. Let's talk about the limiting factors of packing all of these delightful games home. The first limiting factor is the big box size. Big box games, you can't nest them. This size game is horrible. Ugh. Oh my gosh. Okay. This size box, while super common and nice on your shelf, is horrible for bringing home. You can't nest them inside of themselves. Oh my god, I can't get you back on now. You can't nest those size boxes inside of any other boxes. So try and limit how many of those you buy, and you can do some tests at home to see how many of those size boxes you can fit into your particular suitcases. The other limiting factor would be weight. So you have a 50-pound maximum weight limit on your checked bags. If you go over that weight, the overbag fee is like $100. It's not worth it. If you have a luggage scale, bring that with you and just weigh your bags while you're at the show, while you're packing. Cards and wooden bits take up the most weight, and so carry-ons don't have a weight restriction. If worst comes to worst, you're going to take all those nicely shrink-wrapped decks of cards and you're going to make sure they're labeled with the game and then just throw them in a carry-on bag, because no one weighs the carry-on and it's just your back that you're damaging. You're also limited by time, which is why I recommend that you're constantly punching and bagging your games and preemptively nesting boxes and dumping stuff in a bit bag for your anticipation of your trip home. So let's talk about the actual packing of games. There are a few tricks that I have learned through the years of bringing home lots and lots of games from conventions. Number one is you're going to use your clothing as padding. I recommend that you try not to fold your clothes, or if you do fold your clothes, you're going to be doing it in a slim method so that you can use it for padding to protect the sides of the games. Most suitcases, especially the hardshell ones, are actually rounded corners and edges, so I use clothing to run along the outside edge of the suitcase to help square off the suitcase to better fit our squarish boxes. You also are going to use, I use the decks of cards that I don't end up throwing in my carry-on. I use those in between the handle slots of my suitcases where the up and down extendy handle goes. I just put those in there, makes that level flat, and then I put like a t-shirt or something to help pad those rails, those metal rails from our nice cardboard boxes. Other than those tips, you're mostly just going to be playing Tetris. You're going to use your bag of bits as additional padding throughout. You're going to make sure that you nest in the way that makes sense. You might have to unnest and renest with different configurations as you're packing. It's really more of a puzzle than like something you can just slapdash. If worst comes to worst with these big box games, one of the things that you can do is cut corners. I wouldn't recommend doing this for any game that you think you might be selling or trading in the future. And I wouldn't recommend doing this at all if you can just get away with not doing it. It's not horrible, but you want to make sure you have a sharp knife for this procedure and good packing tape when you get home, or nice clear sturdy tape when you get home to reassemble the box. But you can cut down a lot of boxes and fit a lot more games into your suitcases with this method, but you're gonna run into your weight factor. So sometimes it's not worth it to cut them, because even if you cut them, you're just gonna have way too much weight, and it's just not, you're not gonna be able to bring the games anyway because they weigh too much. And then you'll just have a bunch of caught boxes that you can't get home for like less than $100. So yeah, there's that. If you haven't been punching or pre-punching and pre-bagging your games before you start packing, I'd probably recommend putting aside anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, depending on the number of games that you have for packing. If you have been doing all of that prep, you should be able to pack in less than an hour, maybe an hour, depending on kind of like the lay of the land and how many games you have. You also just need to realize at a certain point that you're not going to be able to get games home. One of the ways that I sort of get around this is I will ship games, and that's basically it. If maybe I didn't bring my maximum number of suitcases to the convention, so for example I brought 3 bags instead of 4 bags, I will usually have a bag that I either picked up at the con or a collapsible shopping bag in my backpack, and I will just use that as an additional carry-on to bring back those big box games that I can't fit in the suitcase. So my like traditional shopping grocery bag that I have in my backpack, I know I can fit 3 Elysium sized games in that. So I won't even waste that space with small games. I'll bring the big box games that I can't fit into my suitcases. I hope this video was helpful for you in regards to packing and prepping to bring all of your physical belongings to and from a convention. I will say that there's so many different ways to do this, and everybody has their own system. This is just what works for me. If you have tips or just any questions at all, feel free to leave them down below in the comments, and I will do my best to reply to those, hopefully before Gen Con. If you are interested in picking up the suitcases that I have in this video, I don't know exactly where to get them or if you can get them, but there's a link down below in the doobly-doo to Amazon where you can acquire a suitcase which is similar, if not the suitcase that I have down below with the nesting awesomeness. If you like this video, feel free to give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, feel free to subscribe, and let me know down in the comments how you bring games home from a convention, especially if you drive. While these tips will work for if you're driving, you just have a little bit more space room, you can consolidate games a bit more. Weight is less of a concern when you're driving, it's more just size, so that's kind of an interesting twist. So yeah, I'd be interested to know that.